we have another rock star waiting on the wings right now, and I would like to invite Mr. David Forman, another author who's done a fantastic job some years ago writing a book called Fearless HR. Again, a book that I really like about is he provides practical steps, things that they do not teach you in universities or the academic world. It talks about, it gives you templates, steps as to how fearless HR has got to be, and that's not it. Now, he's written another book called Fearless. It's largely about talent, and it's called the Fearless Talent. I would rather let Mr. David Forman to come on board, and I should thank you, David, for being here. I appreciate you had some travel plans and all of that, and I appreciate you could fit us in during all your busy schedule as well. And I would like you to take it away, please.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for all the diligent work that you and your team have put together to put on this excellent event. I know yesterday was very, very successful, and Siobhan got us off to a great start today, and I actually look forward to reinforcing some of her key points about how critical it is that we construct what we do in the language of the business, and to think about how we can drive business outcomes and business results, because it has such meaning to the people that we convey. So if I could, let me give you a little glimpse of what the Fearless Talent Choices that can make or break your business is about. So that's what I will try to do here as I attempt to share my screen, which is good. Can we see this?
Not yet, David.
Not yet, okay. All right, sorry about that. Here we go.
No worries.
How about now?
Fantastic.
Great, great. Well, terrific. We got there, even if it's not my most agile thing. But here again, you can see Fearless Talent Choices that can make or break your business. And essentially, this is a book that talks about what we need to do to be able to unleash the human potential of organizations by improving the readiness of the workforce in times of, and these should appear to be pretty familiar to us all these days, unrelenting change, global interdependence, and uncertain prospects, which we...
Sorry, David, would it be possible for you to show it on full screen? You could use the presentation mode right down.
Yes, certainly. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sounds good. Perfect.
Okay, great. So these, again, the notion of change and turbulence and turmoil and global interdependence, something that happens halfway across the world, is on our doorstep immediately, and uncertain prospects are things we're really familiar with. But the question is, how do they impact our business? How do our organizations respond? How does it affect the value proposition that we intend to bring to the marketplace? What does it mean in terms of competitive positioning? And the extent to which we can start to answer these questions will better prepare ourselves and our organizations to be successful. And of course, all this is happening in terms of the pandemic. And some people have said, you know, in terms of our processes and what we do, we should all be thinking in terms of BC, DC, and AC. Before coronavirus, during coronavirus, hopefully that period is very short, and after coronavirus going forward. So I thought this was interesting here to get a little advice from some people who lead our industry, thinking about the DC and AC periods. And the first is from Ram Charan, Dominic Barton, and Dennis Carey. They've written a book called Talent Wins, a really good book. And they have some good advice for us. And since they're largely from McKinsey, we don't have to spend a lot of money. We can just take their advice as we see it right here. So to succeed and grow in an economy that is decimated predictability, it's kind of an interesting way to put it, isn't it? Your company must take 3 critical moves to unleash its talent. Your most vital people must be in roles where they can create significant value. They must be freed from bureaucratic structures designed for a different era, and they must be afforded the opportunities to continually learn and expand their skills. Pretty good advice, really, these top 3 things that they talk about. And a couple of more specific data points from the authors here. When they talk about your most vital people, they say that every chief human resource officer, every HR leader should know who their 2% is, who are their top talent in the organization, the people that are their strongest contributors. They should know 5%. 5%, what are the most critical roles or jobs or positions that are critical to having you implement your value proposition? What are those roles that are most important to having you execute your strategy and be successful in the marketplace? And what they say is it's good to know the 2% and the 5%, but what's really important is, are your 2% in your 5%? Are your best people in the roles that are most significant to your organization going forward? I think really, really sound advice. In terms of their second idea here, we must free our people from bureaucratic structures. I know this is a topic that's going to be addressed in other sessions, but Bain and Company says about 40% of our time within organizations is wasted. Typically, the big time wasters are inefficient meetings, incessant checking of mobile devices, and a focus on multiprocessing, where actually multiprocessing and doing a variety of things at once has pretty much been shown to be counterproductive. So the extent to which we can clear away those barriers will really certainly help performance going forward. And finally, the last quote here is from a couple of leaders at Bain and Company. So again, a leading consulting organization. And I just thought the way that they put this made so much sense. It's not your employees' fault that they are not as productive as they could be. It's your organization's fault. But let's not blame the people. Let's think about how we can create context and environments in which people can flourish. And so there it is. It's on us. It's on us to do a better job. It's on us as leaders of the organization to create this garden that can allow people and ideas to flourish. Here are the 6 talent choices that I talk about, and my book was just really released in this past month. So this is sort of a coming out party for it. So here you see the 6 talent choices, and this is also sort of the visual table of contents for the book. Each one of these represents a chapter. So the first one is, are we focused on what's best for the business? I know we're busy. I know everybody's actively involved, but are these things that are really going to drive the business forward? Are we doing the right things for the business? Not just doing things right, but are we doing the right things for the business? And the key words here are align and focused. If a car goes out of alignment, it wanders all over the road and isn't very efficient and uses a lot of petrol. If organizations are out of alignment, a tremendous amount of time, talent, and resources can be wasted. So thinking about that close alignment and then focus. I remember a story when Steve Jobs came back to Apple after being away, and he got his management team together and says, okay, let's think about all these great, exciting technologies and how we can put a ding in the universe. That was his ultimate purpose of saying how we can really make people's lives better going forward. And they had a great couple of days and they came up with brilliant ideas. And then at the end of the second day, he looked everybody in the eye around the room and said, this is great, but now guess what? We have to pick 4 because that's all we can do. So this notion of focus, and I think especially as we come out of the pandemic, is going to be hugely important. As organizations try to regain their footing, there may be a tendency to try to do so much or too much or everything that we did before, as opposed to focusing on the critical few that can get us back on the right track. The second notion here is being a lead time ahead, which is an engineering term which really talks about how we can anticipate possible futures going forward. And this again is what Siobhan talked about, you know, when the captain up on the bridge being able to see the full horizon, the bigger picture of all the things that can impact the organization. And, you know, the pandemic has clearly shown us that we're not very good at this. We're not good at anticipating possible futures, but we need to be. It's a critical leadership capability now to be able to sense and anticipate what might happen. Maybe even not what's likely to happen, but what might happen, so we can better prepare our workforce and ensure their readiness. So this is hugely important as we go forward. Finally, number 3, a force multiplier, which is about high performance organizations. Again, the type of thing that Siobhan talked about. And you know what's interesting to me here again is, again, force multiplier is a engineering term. It's not an HR term, which I think is great that we start to use the language of the business to describe what we want to talk about. And a force multiplier is creating a culture that works for people so that they can achieve what they need to achieve to improve themselves and to take the organization forward. And so as you take a look at high performing cultures, one of the things that I talk about in this chapter is what are the secrets of high performance? And what you find, and I looked at 11 different research studies, is there are no secrets. We know what it looks like, and I'll show you a picture in just a minute. It's just that we're not doing a very good job of implementing them. So we need to do a better job of optimizing the resources that we have going forward. Network builder. How can we build smart organizations? Organizations that learn from their mistakes, organizations that are greater than the sum of their parts. And here's where we start to get into not just what people know, but how they work together, how they collaborate, where the genius of the company or the firm is not what's within the heads of individual people, but how the individual people work together to achieve something greater than themselves. And so that, I think, is a very important area going forward as we look to be able to deal with this turbulence and uncertainty that is clearly ahead for us. Results-based accountability. We've talked about some things that are nice, but you know what? We have to hold ourselves accountable. That's what leaders do. They just don't hold themselves accountable. They own it. And we have to be able to demonstrate the business results of what it is we do and to be able to articulate that to our clients going forward. And I think this is, you know, a hugely important piece as we go forward. And I'll have a couple of data points to share with you in just a second on that. And finally, number 6 is the 4th industrial revolution and what's ahead of us in terms of artificial intelligence and smart systems and sensors and the Internet of Things. And when I was writing this book, it took me 3 years to write it. I thought this was going to be the far and away the biggest disruption that we were all going to face. And of course, little did I know that the pandemic was going to come and play such a critical role in our lives and in the world's lives. But what's important here is to think about the promise and peril of the technology and the new ways of working that we're creating. And in the past, the technology worked real well for people that were fortunate and in good situations and prosperous. And we have to make sure it works for everyone these days. Yuval Noah Harari, one of my favorite writers, as he looks at sort of the past of industrial revolutions and the advance of technology, he says, we have to do better this time. We have to do better for all people. So these are the 6 talent choices that are in front of us. This is a job aid, as WD mentioned. One of the things that I try to do is to think about the practical applications. So as we think about being a lead time ahead and what are likely to be these global mega trends that are going to impact, what we do going forward. Well, here are 5 that have been identified by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And, they all have a pretty significant impact on our business and our organization and the stewards we are for the environment going forward. And, just some of the data points around urbanization. Well over 50% of the world is in cities. There are 22 mega cities of 10 million people or more, 17 of which are in Asia and Africa. The world's oldest country and the world's youngest country. Any idea what those countries are and what that average age might be? And we might do a little Q&A after that. And as you think about sort of the fastest growing segment of population, is it younger adults? Is it adults? Is it older adults? And what might that have to do with our business, our services, how we approach the marketplace, and how we can improve our readiness for what's likely to come? So there's a ton of information about each of these. And again, we have to be the captain on the bridge to see these types of things coming. There's some very interesting research that says the very process of going through this and trying to anticipate possible futures allows your organization to be better able to adapt and more agile in how it adapts to an uncertain future. So there's value just in the process. Here is the model of high-performing organizations. I won't go through all of these. They're here for you to see. But as I mentioned, I looked at 11 different research studies, some very significant, others more anecdotal, and there is a huge consensus about what makes high-performing organizations. And here they are. And, as you think about this list, think about maybe the piece of this list, the slice of the pie that is in every single one of those 11 studies. One of these segments is, and I'll share that with you in just a second. And you can see, of course, that trust and transparency are right there and undergird the whole approach and whole system. This is the largest single chapter of the book. There are a ton of tools and job aids about each one of these things. But I wanted you again to get the bigger picture here going forward. And does this matter? Does this matter? Does thinking about high performance workplaces matter? And again, some latest research here that takes a look at not just what it means to be an engaged worker, but if you can even go beyond that. So again, this is from Bain and Company. It says, if you're a dissatisfied employee, you're producing, less than 40% of your salary because you're not pleased at what you're doing. If you're satisfied, you're contributing your salary and benefits to the organization. If you're engaged, 44% over your salary. But guess what? If you're inspired, that number triples. And so you can see the payoff here. And what's interesting is that for people who are satisfied, let me go back to this model again, typically one part of this model is something that they're pleased about. If you're engaged, it's typically 2 to 3 parts of this model that you're going to talk about that are extremely important for you. And if you are inspired, it again is more than two of these factors, but the one that really stands out above all, in addition, the force multiplier, is purpose, meaningful purpose, and a real belief in the importance of what you do. So yes, this matters. Yes, this has an impact on the business. One last slide here, which is about the Industrial Revolution 4.0 and the technologies, again, that are in front of us, and the combination of digital, physical, biological technologies, and where this really, really, can be extremely disruptive in both a positive and a negative way, is when these technologies interact and work together, so that the digital, physical, and biological work together. And of course, the pandemic just reminds us again and again that the biological piece here, and many experts feel that this is the most significant domain, the most significant technology that we're going to see, advancing in the next decades. But it is so important to our basic survival. Lots of interesting examples here. But again, the technology giveth and the technology taketh. And we have to be able to look at the entire impact, almost like an environmental impact report of how these technologies affect the workplace going forward. So this is my last slide. I know we don't have a lot of time together, but there are so many good speakers and so many good ideas going forward. The future belongs to the learners, not the knowers, because we are looking at an uncertain time, turbulence, global interconnectedness, uncertain futures. So we always have to be learning. We always have to see that as possible. And the one thought that I'll leave you with, which relates to kind of my opening comments about the importance of, what we do, improving the organization and making our businesses better and stronger. This is a quote that is in Fearless HR, the last book that I wrote. It's from the Chief Human Resource Officer of one of the world's largest mining companies. And he said, I don't consider myself as a Chief Human Resource Officer an HR leader at all. And this got people's attention pretty quickly. And what he then said was, I consider myself a business leader who focuses on talent, culture, and organization. And I thought it was really a very thoughtful and incisive statement, because he knew that by taking that approach, he was going to have much more credibility and visibility with his business colleagues. So thank you so much for spending your time, your valuable time with me. Hopefully I've given you a little bit of an indication of what Fearless Talent Choices is about, and the extent to which we can have some further discussions and interact would be wonderful. So that is it for me. I can turn it back over to the team.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so very much, as always. Very insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, Forman, his career spanned 4 decades, and we are so honored to have him with us. As a business, as a learning scientist, business leader, chief learning officer, and an adjunct professor of the Pasadena Graziado, excuse me, Graziadio School of Business. Apologies if I pronounce it wrong.
Well, you got it right.
Thank you. And a best-selling author. I could go on and on and on, but his entire bio is available on our website. Trust me, he's written a fantastic book. Most of everything I like his title, Fearless HR and Fearless Talent Choices. So appropriate and relevant to the current times that we are all experiencing around the world. I must start off by saying thank you so very, very much, David, for being with us. We are truly honored and privileged to have you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
I have a few questions. I know just after Paul's session, you have so gracefully agreed to stay back to take more questions. I have a few questions right now, David, from the attendees. So how to deal with failure resulting out of choice made?
Forward to my book is the CEO of WD-40. His name is Gary Ridge. And he's a remarkable person, and the company's remarkable. Just a great case study. And he said, we don't have failures at WD-40. We have learning moments. We treat them that way. Now, obviously, if somebody's slacking off, or it's an attitude or a work focus issue, that's one thing. But you want people taking chances. You want people thinking about tough choices. You want people extending themselves. And you have to create, again, in the culture of acceptance. And there are some organizations who have awards for the best failure. It seems perhaps not the wisest thing to do, but that's what they're saying. They say, hey, take a chance. Facebook, move fast and break things. Maybe we should have. That's what the world is like today, and we want to encourage that in people. We want to encourage them to take chances and to take tough choices.
Excellent. David, I know there are lots of other questions, but is it okay if I just defer them to the panel that we...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your understanding, David. Thank you. And I'll also ask the same of the audience, the attendees who have asked. Please stay tuned in. In about 20-30 minutes, we're going to have Mr. David back on, and he's so gracefully agreed to be with us to answer more questions. I'd like to